government and the United States amid the arrival of two U.S. warships sent to Venezuelan coasts. It's been reported that the military ships are expected on Thursday morning, part of a larger campaign announced by the Trump administration to tackle drug trafficking in the Caribbean. This comes as the U.S. is accusing Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro of running the drug cartel known as Cartel de los Soles. The White House has even increased a reward on Maduro to $50 million for information leading to his capture.
President Trump has been very clear and consistent. He's prepared to use every element of American power to stop drugs from flooding into our country and to bring those responsible to justice. The Maduro regime is not the legitimate government of Venezuela. It is a narco-terror cartel. In Maduro, it is the view of this administration, is not a legitimate president.
Venezuelan officials have responded strongly, saying the U.S. is threatening stability in the region.
This week, I'm going to activate a special plan to guarantee the safety with more than 4.5 million militiamen prepared, activated, and armed throughout the entire national territory.
Colombian leftist President Gustavo Petro commented on the pressure Trump is putting on Maduro.
The Americans are in trouble if they think invading Venezuela will solve their problem. That would drag Venezuela into a situation like Syria, only with the added problem that they would be pulling Colombia into it too.
Other government officials, such as the Minister of Defense General Vladimir Padrino, have said the accusations are part of a false narrative created by the Trump administration.
So essentially what you're dealing with and what you're seeing right now is that, first of all, Venezuela, Maduro is not even recognized by the United States of America as a rightful president of Venezuela. And let me tell you what that is. This presidential election within Venezuela, this actually happened during the Biden administration, right? So when Biden was president, Venezuela actually had their elections. The Biden administration never acknowledged, nor did the people in Venezuela. They said that he stole the election. All right. They said that he stole the election and that he wasn't the actual rightful president. Let me actually go and look that up. Venezuela election 2024. Venezuela elections. Candidates call to vote, respect the vote.
But Nicolas Maduro's opponents see him as a dictator who's ruled with an iron fist. The 61-year-old was catapulted to power after being handpicked by Hugo Chavez. Riding on the coattails of his revolutionary mentor, Maduro narrowly won the presidency for the first time in 2013. A baseball fan who often salsas for the cameras, he's known for fending off one crisis after another. Despite sitting on the world's largest oil reserves, Venezuelans struggle with hyperinflation and critical shortages of basic goods. Political and economic ties with states including China, Russia and Iran have helped the country stay barely afloat. Maduro faced down sanctions after his re-election in 2018 wasn't recognized. Just like Chavez, Maduro has attempted to deflect blame for Venezuela's long list of troubles. He claimed victory in last July's presidential election, but the opposition accused Maduro of stealing the vote. Very few Latin American countries recognized his win. The EU and the US said opposition candidate Edmundo Gonzalez was the real winner, provoking responses like these from Maduro.
I denounce the US government, which, along with Elon Musk and the international fascist Javier Milei, are leading attempts to destabilize our people and carry out a coup against Venezuelan democracy.
So a lot of what they were saying was they were basically saying that this guy stole the election, that a lot of what he was doing was eliminating his enemies also. Basically, he was trying to be Putin of Venezuela, and he was trying to have absolute power and control. And part of that is because he is trying to continuously control the drug cartels and the drug running, and actually filling different states or different countries with drugs like the United States of America.
Now to some other big headlines. Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro has been sworn in for a third term as president, despite widespread doubts over the legitimacy of the country's election results. Many world leaders, including President Biden, are refusing to recognize Maduro as the country's duly elected president. And this isn't the first time Maduro has come under international scrutiny. The US and other nations also condemned his 2018 re-election as illegitimate. Meantime, we're also monitoring the situation in Sudan. This week, the U.S. determined the Sudanese rebel group.
So this was way 7 months ago, right? This was back during the election in Venezuela when the Biden administration was actually in office, and they refused to acknowledge that Maduro was actually the rightful president of the United States of America. And now what you have is the United States of America not only putting a $50 million bounty on his head because he continues to control and seek power, while at the same time, funding his whole regime through drug money. And that's basically what they're saying, is that he's basically flooding the United States of America and other countries with drug money, even though he's not the rightful president of Venezuela.
Sending 3 warships to the waters of Venezuela as part of a major counter-narcotics operation. A White House official has confirmed this to CBS News. We're told that the USS Gravely, the USS Jason Dunham, and the USS Sampson will depart for the region over the next few days. Now, this is a part of President Trump's effort to combat threats from Latin American drug cartels. CBS News senior national security correspondent Charlie D'Agata is at the Pentagon with all the details. So, Charlie, great to have you on. Can you further explain why the U.S. is sending warships specifically to Venezuela?
Yeah, Tarika, officials I've spoken to here say this is strictly a White House decision. This isn't necessarily a military decision. And as you said, the White House has told us those 3 guided missile destroyers, the Gravely, the John Dunham, and the Sampson, are expected to head to the waters off Venezuela over the next few days to combat threats from Latin American drug cartels. 4,000 sailors and Marines will be part of that mission. In fact, yesterday, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt didn't even rule out the possibility of U.S. troops on the ground in Venezuela. And that the president is prepared to use every element of American power to stop drugs from flooding into the United States. So deploying these battleships is apparently part of that effort. But I have to mention, this isn't the first time destroyers have been deployed to the region. In fact, the Gravely, as I just mentioned there, had been patrolling the Caribbean Sea for months.
And when you think about the drug operations and just how complex, we've been talking about this for years, how much of a difference is this expected to make?
Again, we're talking about a show of force, a deterrent, and they are working closely with the Coast Guard that has been patrolling those waters for years. So really, it's a question of scale. I mentioned the Gravely there. Navy officials said it had been part of a drug interdiction back in May. That just gives you an idea how long this has been going on. They seized 860 pounds of cocaine. A few days ago, the Sampson and its crew intercepted drug smuggling vessel, seizing around 1,300 pounds of cocaine. That was in the Eastern Pacific. So they try to position their ships along known drug trafficking corridors. They've also stepped up their surveillance, and this is kind of important. Special Navy aircraft are patrolling that area too. But look, it's a big sea to patrol the whole thing. And of course, these ships will be operating in international waters. It's explained to me today how effective they're going to be. They're going to be at least 12, 13 miles off the coast of Venezuela. Venezuela is actually claiming more water than that is theirs and not international. So it may not stem the tide, but it's not the kind of significant naval presence to set up a blockade.
Any idea how long those ships will stay in that area?
No, Tarika, this is really key. We're not even entirely sure they've started making their way there yet, because this is the kind of loose language. The Navy folks that I spoke to said they're not headed there yet. At least the officials I spoke with said that it's a question of how long it will take to get there. In terms of how long the ships could be there, hypothetically, again, that depends on the White House, because from a military perspective, a typical deployment for destroyers like this is usually around 6 months. But at least 2 of those destroyers, which I've already mentioned, have been on patrol for months. So if the idea is to have a constant U.S. naval military presence there, it's not necessarily the ships are involved or whether they continue to rotate them in and out for months.
So essentially what you see happening is that you have what we would describe as a dictator inside of Venezuela, basically continuing to try to hold power because he is looked at as an international criminal and he has a $50 million bounty on his head from the United States of America alone. The Trump administration is going after him. The Biden administration never recognized him, and they actually have seized his planes and stuff like that. And then also on top of that, you basically have the reason why the United States of America cares is because they say that he continues to flood the United States of America with drugs that ultimately allows for him to maintain power in his own country. So, for example, somebody says nobody cares about that country. We got our own problems. Well, what happens when that problem is basically coming from the place that we identified as a person that is continuing to maintain power, and he didn't even get it the right way, and he's actually eliminating his enemies as a result of it. If they continue to flood our shores and everything with drugs, and they continue to do all of this stuff, then how is that not becoming our problem, is what the Trump administration is saying. If it is directly impacting our shores and our people, does it then become our problem or no? Because I agree in that I don't want to be involved in anything that the world is going on. But let's also be clear here. Let's be very, very transparent, and let's be clear. All right? Let's be clear. I know that they're saying that, oh man, he's, got all of this militia. He's got 4.5 million members of a militia, and he has, whatever, 75,000 troops, 45,000 troops, or anything like that, right? Shout out to Zardwi. I appreciate you. Bro, we could level goddamn Venezuela like this. We could literally level all of the motherfuckers and just completely break their spirit if we wanted to. Now, I'm not an advocate for that, obviously, but I'm just saying, let's be very, very clear. When we seen Putin and Trump meeting in Alaska, and we seen those destroyers and all of the bombers that was flying over their heads, he was making a point, and he was basically letting people know. Not only was he letting Putin know, but he was putting the world on display, and he was just basically letting them know, listen, we could fuck this whole shit up if y'all really want to play games. Please stop playing games with us. And so what I see from a person like a Maduro, who is not recognized as the rightful president of Venezuela, is I see him being willing to sacrifice people in order to maintain power, not necessarily caring about the country itself. And those type of people become super dangerous.